Nandini ma'am? Now we'll begin with valedictory session. Yes. I invite Ms. Aparna to give a brief report of the conference.
Thank you, Kavita. Am I audible? Yeah. Hello, everybody. A very good evening and good morning to some of our foreign participants. I'm Aparna from the Department of Computer Science, and it gives me immense pleasure in presenting a brief report of this conference. The event began with prayer and virtual lamp lighting on day one. Our principal, Dr. Sister Amrita, delivered the welcome address and spoke about the importance of audible as a discipline and the need. Hello, everyone.
Nandini ma'am?
Aparna, you are audible.
Now we'll begin with valedictory session. Yes. I invite Ms. Aparna to give a brief report of the conference. Nandini ma'am?
Yeah, am I audible?
We'll
Sorry for that technical glitch.
I invite.
Ma'am, but the echo is coming still.
I closed off the YouTube live stream. Is it fine now?
Yeah. All right.
Okay. So initially our principal, Dr. Sister Amrita, delivered the welcome address and spoke about the importance of computer science as a discipline and the need for imbibing our students with a curiosity towards research. Dr. Smita Asthana, Dean Academics and IQAC Coordinator, addressed the gathering and threw light on the various mechanisms that are available at St.Ann's in order to develop a spirit of research and innovation among faculty and students. Our chief guest, Professor K. Shyamala, Department of Computer Science from the University College of Engineering, OU, spoke about the perils of fake news and hate speech and also the possibilities of research in these areas. The conference also had many expert speakers delivering lectures on the various themes of the conference. Technical session 1 by Professor Narina Ringo from the Finance and Economics Institute of Russia was on the fourth industrial revolution. Professor Narina highlighted the ubiquity of technology and internet and how COVID has forced us to adapt and imbibe technology on a daily basis, and also on the huge impact of digitization on Indian economy. The second technical session of day one was by Dr. Satish Kumar from the Department of Computer Applications, Bharatiyar University, Coimbatore. He covered the wide-ranging applications and impact of artificial intelligence in various domains. Day 2 began with a technical session on ERP systems and digital accounting by Dr. Augustine Gavini from Arizona, USA. Sir spoke about the importance of real-time strategic decision-making capabilities brought about by technology and their impact on business. Colonel Amit Watts, the head of the Department of Information Systems from the College of Defense Management, Secunderabad, spoke about the various aspects of cybersecurity in detail. The session focused on the need for maintaining cyber hygiene and keep it on par with physical hygiene, that we were all forced to follow due to the pandemic. 3 parallel presentation sessions were held on day 2, making use of Zoom breakout rooms in order to accommodate all the presentations. The highlight of our conference was the large number of student publications submitted and presented over the past 2 days. A total of 56 papers were received and around 41 papers were contributed exclusively by students. Day 3 of the conference, which is today, began with a technical session by Dr. Patrick, Associate Professor from the Department of Commerce, Osmania University, who shed light on the advances in business analytics area, followed by paper presentation.
I request now.
Our main aim in planning and organizing this conference was to provide a platform to our students to explore their research interests and also to get comfortable with the idea of writing and presenting papers at various forums. And we are very confident that, this is a step taken up by us in the right direction. And we hope to see all of you participants in our future events as well. Thank you.
I take this opportunity to invite Mr. Sri Harsha Udali, Vice President. Head Engineering, ATG New Fold Digital India Operations. I now invite Ms. Sreshta, MSCS final year, to introduce Mr. Sri Harsha.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, all. It's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Sri Harsha Udali, sir, to all of you. Mr. Sri Harsha Udali is the Vice President, Engineering and Head ATG, Newfold Digital India Operations. He is responsible for Newfold Digital India Operation, spanning technology, product, HR, IT and infrastructure, and finance divisions. Mr. Sri Harsha has an MBA in finance from the Indian School of Business, Hyderabad, MS Chemical Engineering from Louisiana Tech University, Ruston, BE Chemical Engineering from BITS Pilani. Sir has over 2 decades of global IT experience and diverse management expertise, focusing on P&L management, strategic business unit leadership, product management, relationship management for Fortune 500 companies across the US, Europe, and APAC geographies. He handled P&L responsibilities and managed global deliveries of large offshore development centers for Fortune 400 customers such as S&P, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, American Express, United Health, Barclays Capital, Barclays, etc. in the banking, financial services, and insurance space. We welcome you, sir, with green greetings.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, and good evening to all. And at the outset, would like to thank everyone, and especially the principal and the faculty of St.Ann Degree College for providing this opportunity to share some thoughts on digital transformation. Can I go ahead, or?
Yes, sir, you can share your screen.
I think someone is sharing the screen. I will not be able to share now. Okay, so let me try. Okay, is it visible?
Yes,
Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay. All right. So I will not go into too much of technical details, considering this is kind of a vast subject to explore, and talking about transformation of an organization, and then it is marketing driven. So there are 2 different concepts of business and technology together. So I'll probably try to keep it at a very high level and probably answer any questions later. So move on to the next slide. Oops. All right. So I just wanted to start off with a case study or an example of Blockbuster and Netflix. I think many of the college students would be aware of Netflix. They might be Netflix users as well. But Blockbuster is, or probably was, a very big company, kind of a monopoly in movie and content. And they didn't kind of transform themselves into as per the customer needs or as per the market needs. And therefore, they were like, it was like a David and Goliath. And later what happened was that because they didn't want to change as per the market and as per the customer needs, and therefore they had to go bankrupt, and Netflix picked up. So if you look at from 1998 till 2010, and then from 2010 to 2020, this particular graph will give you a bit more understanding about how Blockbuster was at its peak of valuation of 8.4 billion in 1994 and came down to 24 million, while Netflix moved to 203 billion. This is 2020. So they're continuing to grow and Blockbuster is nowhere. Part of this, or the major reason for this, is not having the ability to transform or change based on how the market forces are driving the company, and also not being nimble and agile. So that's very important to understand from a digital transformation. I'll probably talk about a couple of other things. There are a lot of videos on YouTube. Interested folks can look at those. I thought of running it, but because of lack of time, I chose not to run the video. But there is an interesting case study that can be followed up. So I don't want to get into defining a digital transformation because digital transformation for a lot of people means different things and different jargons and terminologies. These at a very high level, when you look at a word cloud, this is what comes up on digital transformation. So we have to look at, is there a very fundamental way of looking at digital transformation? So if you look at, there are, I would say it could be different viewpoints for digital transformation. Boston Consulting Group, or BCG, talks about 5 different pillars for digital transformation. Microsoft talks about 4. Google says there are 5 again, and Harvard Business Review says there are 4. But primarily, if you look at the basic pillars, or people, process, technology, and the culture and governance, and companies can give different names to it. But at the end of the day, these are the primary drivers for digital transformation. And many companies fail because of lack of cohesion between various pillars. And therefore, they don't tend to give you the right kind of results which are expected out of it, partly because of inertia in the organization, there is resistance, change management, people are not ready yet. So there are a lot of, I would say, moving parts in this entire transformation journey. And if the companies are not ready for anticipating challenges, then they would actually end up becoming a huge failures, or eventually could be a disaster for the organization. Now, I think many of us use a lot of channels to access various services, whether someone is using Amazon or Netflix, or you go to, in the US, it's Walmart, or you could look at Amazon, right? Even Apple, any technology company or non-technology company, you go to Macy's.com or you go to Flipkart. At the end of the day, customers would want access to the services whenever they want, anywhere, anytime, at their convenience, and they would want it to be personalized for their preferences and the way that they would want to shop. So this is a very illustrative diagram about the infrastructure that is required, typically in their own data centers or on the cloud. And very important thing is the personalization and the single sign-on factors, and as well as the customer experience, which is very important to engage your customers to be able to shop, and therefore you generate revenues out of it. There are multiple channels, could be a website, could be a mobile, could be a kiosk, or sometimes you can use Apple TV, Google TVs, and so on and so forth also to purchase. As there are multiple channels, I'll probably even talk about some of those in the subsequent slides. It's important to give a omni-channel, which means that whichever channel a customer chooses, they should be able to transact the business, and the company should be able to realize the sales. Otherwise, you'll be only giving a lot of touch points to the customers, but eventually you won't be able to generate revenue. And that's kind of a disaster for a company, because if you don't have any revenues, how are you going to be a profitable company and run your business and compete with the best of the best? So I'll move on to the next slide. So this is another case study or an example of most of us have bank loans or planning to have some kind of a bank loan at some point of time. And there are multiple channels. And this is an illustrative one. Actually, the source is from a call center data from Google Analytics. And McKinsey had done this analysis. And if you look at, they have taken about 100,000 people. Basically, it is an indexed number, not an exact number. So at an index number of 100,000 or 1 lakh, if they have a certain customer number as 100,000 for loan products, and this is, let's not get into the different loans. Let's assume that it's a loan product. And pre-approved loans are anyway executed, which means that someone is interested to take a loan from a bank, and they have come up with a certain need for themselves. And if you look at out of the 100,000, 4,000 in this particular example, 4,500 start off on the phone, which is one channel, and about 94,000 on the website. About 22,000 go directly to the bank website, and about 72,000 do a web search, so do a Google search or Bing or whatever, and then that directs to the kind of a bank that you're looking at, and this is primarily in the US. So, and then 1,500 walk into a branch. So that's kind of a split. So predominantly 98,000 are shopping online for loan products, or 94,000, and about 6,000 is what is the split between phone and the branch. As you see, it kind of tapers down. And if I look at the far right, the number of approved loans is 2,370 out of 100,000, which means 2.37% people have been given the approval of loans, which means 97,630 are probably not getting a loan, or they have probably dropped out in between. So this is a very important factor for an organization to understand. And here there are some snippets here, like 98,000 of the phone customers give up and not bother to request an offer, and 80% of the online customers quit before registration. So these are some of the key aspects that a company has to understand the customer behavior and why they are not able to actually move forward with the loan. It could be that they could have gone to their competitor, or let's say an ICICI Bank or an Axis Bank would go to, say, some other bank, and therefore they're losing their business. So we have to understand the customer behavior, the customer propensity, what kind of products that they want to choose, and what is the demographics. There are multiple parameters. And I think in the earlier session on the analytics or that particular session, someone might have talked about a typical analytic platform could be a data warehouse or various other reporting tools. So those give insights as to what could be the way to get more business. And moving on to the next slide, I have particularly looked at an example of using a tool called Pega. And Pega itself is I would say, a great tool for digital transformation for large organizations, enterprise organizations, Fortune 500 customers. Typically, if you look at most of the banks on the left side, the argument is that they were always siloed, which means that no department talks to other department. They were kind of reinventing the wheel, doing the same thing over and over again, like KYC, which is know your customer, documentation. So every time you go, they ask for the same ID and various other documents. Every other department. Suppose you have a savings account and then you want to go for a loan. So the loan department again asks you the same, Aadhaar card or whatever, right? So this happens whether it is in retail banking or on the credit cards or mortgages. So and you can see there are multiple errors which basically can confuse the customer, and there is a lot of inefficiency in the system. Rather, if you look at it as a centralized strategy, it gives you an ability to look at across the platforms, and you can probably minimize a lot of these duplication of efforts, and therefore gives you better insight and efficiency to respond to your customer needs, and therefore be much more nimble and respond to the customer wants and quickly convert them into sales and keep those customers. At the end of the day, you want to get new customers and also want to maintain them and retain them for future. So Pega has come up with, this is the kind of a brain of Pega, I would say. And this is called as Customer Decision Hub. So there are three important aspects here, and there are three different color coding here. So the yellow is the information that, there are a lot of data warehouses, there are a lot of databases, and tremendous amount of data that comes in variety and velocity. And then with that data, you would also have to understand how your customers are behaving, or how have they behaved in the past. You have to look at it in the past, in the current trends, in the future trends, how we want to engage your customers through a very compelling customer experience or user experience, so that they feel that, okay, this is the right platform or right company for me to shop, and that's sometimes called as share of the wallet or customer lifetime value. So the companies would keep looking at how can I keep increasing the sales from each customer, so that I can keep growing that the sales from that customer, and also try to cross-sell and upsell, which means that today if they buy product A and B, can I sell product C and D? And therefore you're continuously looking to sell that. Sometimes you might have seen in a telecom, whether it's Airtel or Jio, they typically would want you to have one connection, then move you into the content based, then fiber, and then they say there is a household account. Now you can have multiple things bundled as a package. So I don't want to get into too much of marketing jargon, then it kind of moves away from the overall technology viewpoint. Now, you also want to understand what's in their profile. Are they single? Are they married? So the demographics are very important. And what kind of data has streamed in? So you're looking at in the moment. So typically what happened, say 10 years ago, is data is collected, then they blast off certain campaigns. Sometimes you get emails whether you want to buy a certain product. So that's a typical old fashioned. And the new real-time artificial intelligence-based omni-channel powered engines of companies like Pega, Salesforce, what they do is they try to understand at that point of time what the customer has been doing. So I can give an example in the next couple of slides. So you first try to understand data about your customer with what you have, and then you look at what is their context. So the context is, are they right now unhappy? Do they want to really buy? So you have to try to understand the context in which that they are interacting with you in whichever channel of their choice. Could be a chat, could be an email, could be on a website where you have a URL and you click and to get to the right kind of website page. And what is their propensity? Are they going to buy? Have they already bought? So you keep looking at who are the possible customers that can keep giving you more revenue, and how much that is worth. You also have to look at, so all of these are AI-driven machine learning models or algorithms that are written, and hundreds of algorithms are driven by the Pega platform. So it looks at what is the current worth and what kind of products that they have propensity to buy. So multiple factors that they look at and then figure out. Some of them could be recommendation engines, for example, or even decision trees, so on and so forth. And once you have that insight, like, okay, this is what the customer wants, then you want to give the next best action. Okay, they are probably going to buy these three, and you rank them, and then the customer service representative or on the web, you get these are the choices, and accordingly, suppose you're in a bank, you're logged into the internet banking portal, and you actually see that okay, we have a loan for you, a personal loan at this interesting rate. So that kind of data has been mined from the existing data, and with some real time. Sometimes they also do a lot of social media integration, like what you're saying on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn and Instagram, and try to see if you are recently have talked about, say, for example, I'm planning for a vacation, say, for example, to Shimla. You might have mentioned something on a Facebook with your friends or in a particular group. So they would know that you are looking for some kind of a travel. So a travel package, if it's a bank says, okay, I have a Forex card, or I have a travel package for you. So whatever you are providing on the net, the personal information can also be used. Okay. And so basically the action is what strategy to use and what action do we take to ensure that there is a high possibility or probability for the customer to buy, and what treatment. So these are all various offers, and then there could be hundreds of offers for a customer. But again, you will have to use the algorithms to figure out what are the top 3, top 5 based on the high probability. And again, if you don't choose it, then again, the entire AI engine would again run through the entire data that you're providing in nanoseconds. So if you look at sometimes 100 milliseconds is the time that it can quickly come up with the next best set of actions to be taken to keep the customer. Sometimes the customer can be very, irritated because they didn't get the right kind of service, or they did something but it was not recorded. So they can be very unhappy. Then that's not the time to sell some other product to them. So you have to understand. So one of the examples I give on the next slide. So these are the next best actions that I was talking about. So there are a lot of activities, and then the engine looks at what is the feasibility, the relevance for that particular customer, what is the reliability, right? And at the end of the day, what is the value that is generated? What is the dollar amount or rupee amount that a customer can at that point of time buy based on a certain set of recommendations and decisions? Typically, I would say a lot of us would have actually looked at an abandoned cart. You would go to Amazon and you want to buy something, you put it on the cart, but you don't do anything. Or even Flipkart and either the Big Basket or whatever platforms you go. And then they would see that, here, for example, if the cart is open for more than 1 hour and no purchase is made, then either you get an SMS if you're an existing customer, or you would be given some other targeting message as an email if you're given that, right? And sometimes they also through cookies, and there are multiple ways to understand the customer and then provide these messages. Likewise, when you are actually moving from one geofence, say if you are an Airtel customer in Hyderabad and you're traveling to say Bangalore, as soon as you cross the geofence or the geographical fencing, as they call, then maybe if you're on a flight, as soon as you land, when you switch on your phone, you get certain messages that okay, Airtel or Jio has these particular plans for you, or if you're roaming, then you get this. So they know that you have moved from one geographical area to another, and therefore the offers are tailored or made very specific for you. So likewise, the companies keep on looking at how best to service the needs and at the same time create the wants. And sometimes life stage event is again a very important aspect, which is a demographic trend, right? If you're single, then you have certain needs. If you're recently married, then you probably start thinking about buying a house very soon or buying a car. So they would then, you can start getting messages about the car loans and so on and so forth. And if a person or if a customer has a childbirth, right, and then they would probably look at what are the needs for a child, and then give those contextual messages. Those are very important aspects, and for all of this, your technology platform should be able to predict. So there are predictive analytics and there are adaptive analytics as well. So a lot of those go under the hood, which most of the customers are not aware. But then a lot of this goes in having that kind of huge infrastructure. And again, I'm talking about from a Pega as a tool. And there are other versions, but the concept still remains the same, where you're looking at churn likelihood is if a customer can potentially leave you, then what would you want to do? You want to give them a certain offer. So those are some of the examples. And because of paucity of time, I would probably come to this particular slide to quickly explain from a technology standpoint. At the end of the day, a lot of us, including myself, have been a developer. And I know that software engineers or developers, even testers, need to know what are the trends that are happening. And in fact, the organizers had told me to spend a bit more time talking about what the market expects from the college students and how they can better prepare themselves. So let me take an example of this digital transformation kind of a landscape, right? So there are probably, I would say, 4 different components to this. Agile is more in terms of the process. Most companies are more into agile development, right? And then what kind of technologies will be your bedrock in terms of how you want to deliver your experience to the customers. Communication is very important between your customers and your organization. What is the domain and various processes? So domain here is like a subject matter. Could be if you're in a bank or financial services or insurance, retail, CPG, or telecom or the manufacturing, right? These are all sectors or verticals or whatever you want to call them, but each of them will have its own domain that is needed. At a high level, the roles that typically you would find in a digital transformation landscape are architects who could be solution architects, enterprise architects, and architects come in various flavors: senior, junior, technical architects, so on and so forth. And then there is a product management, what type of product you want to create and how you want to sell it. Release management is all about how you want to make sure your releases are available to your customers. Say, for example, Facebook or Netflix or Amazon, they don't stop their websites, right? It's a continuous way of delivering new features, which happens in seconds for them. And that happens because of some of the skills I've mentioned on the right. So the release management is very important. If you look at some of the banks, even today, have maybe a 3-month or 6-month or 9 months sometimes, depending on complexity, in terms of coming up with a new release of their product. But if you look at the new age or digitally native companies like Amazon, Apple, they tend to deliver in few seconds new changes, and you would not even know. As customers, it's so seamless that you would not even know that new features are being pushed, and we don't even know anything has been stopped. It's all because of the continuous integration and continuous deployment, or DevOps. It's basically development and ops together, working together to give that seamless experience for the end customers like us. And of course, the underlying stack will have Dockers and Kubernetes, which are basically much more, I would say, will help in a large-scale deployment. Automation, at the end of the day, if you look at the CI/CD, the Dockers, Kubernetes, automation, all of these work in tandem. They work together, and on top of it, your AI, ML, the big data analytics are sitting on top of that layer. And your UI, UX are very important, which is basically user interface and user experience. If your website is very clunky and it doesn't look good or is not engaging, then the customers can quickly move on to your competitor side. So you have to make sure that your customers spend longer time. The longer they spend, I mean, if you look at a lot of studies, the longer they spend, they would tend to buy more. And again, on the program management, these are all more at a manager level. The portfolio management is multiple programs, multiple projects could form a portfolio. And coming to developers and testers, I think these are the very key roles for entry-level folks coming into the corporate. So when I say full stack, this is a very important skill that is very much needed in the market. But before getting into some of these technical details, one of the key things that the dynamics that we have seen in the industry is that the colleges or the academic institutions need to help in increasing the communication skills of the students, so that they're able to have that kind of a foundation that they can directly interact with the customers as soon as possible. Gone are the days when some of the developers and testers were able to hide behind, and some folks who were good in communication were able to manage it. And if you look at, because of the pandemic and the COVID-19 situation, we have been able to disrupt the entire model, right? Earlier, it was thought that it is necessary to be in the offices to be able to deliver. Now, because of the transformation that the entire industry has gone through, it is important that if you are sitting in your home and still you're able to deliver, which means sometimes you have to directly interact with a lot of people within your team, across the teams in the same geography or across countries, which means communication is going to be very fundamental. And I think the emphasis should be in terms of participating in more project-based, working with multiple people, group discussion, project-based work is more important rather than individual brilliance. Individual brilliance is good, but at the same time, team spirit, working with suppose you have a group of 5 or 6 people that are working on a project. Each one has to be assigned certain work, and all of you should be able to then talk about what is a project, what is the design, what is the requirement, what is the design, and how we have deployed it. So communication is very key in this current environment and also in the future. One of the key things is on the technologies is a lot of people expect that either a front end or a back end, right? When I say UI UX, it is more from a front end, could be React, could be Angular, could be HTML, CSS, JavaScript, so on and so forth. But then that also has to integrate with the middle tier, which is your Dockers, Kubernetes. I think I'll go back to one of the slides here. Yeah, so a lot of these are in the infrastructure tier, you have the middle tier as well. And it is important to understand that you're building those skills. So, for example, if you are being taught Python, for example, or Java, it's important to start writing programs. And so there is tons of information out there for free in YouTube. And there are free courses in Coursera, Udemy, Edureka, wherever you want, right? So try to augment yourself and need to have the hunger to learn. And also always be aware of what's happening, what are the trends. And there is sometimes I also spend a lot of time going through some of the videos whenever I have time. And it is important for this generation of developers to become proficient, or at least have a very solid understanding of cloud. And if you look at Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud or Azure, they provide a lot of free accounts. One way of preparing, or the students can prepare themselves for the jobs is that they can utilize some of these free accounts, use sandboxes which are available for free again, have those go through the videos, say, for example, on AWS, understand how the front end, the middle tier, and the front middle tier and the back end would actually work, and what are the various products that are available across all of this spectrum, and try to keep playing. The more you play, the more you would actually understand these tools and be much more comfortable. And one other thing I would suggest from an interview perspective is students should probably conduct mock interviews for themselves, so that, and there are enough questions if you're going for a Java, Python, or Oracle, or whichever the tools that you are being taught. There are plenty of interview questions, and sometimes I see students are not even prepared to go to those websites to understand what could be the potential questions. So the more a student is prepared, the better they can actually deliver in the interview and be more confident. Lack of preparation is one of the fundamental reasons for failure. And I think it is, at the end of the day, it is the student's career. If the students are not willing to put in the right kind of effort, there is no free lunch, right? The students have to put the effort and should go walk the extra mile. You can't expect the institutes to provide everything on a silver spoon, right? Students, I know I'm talking a little bit from a it's a direct. I didn't want to sugarcoat some of this because I'm seeing this happen over and over again. And even when so many facilities and I would say platforms and free coaching or free courses are available, a lot of students are not taking charge for their careers. I think that is an important aspect, that each student should start feeling that it is my responsibility. You are not in schools anymore, you are in colleges, and therefore it is important for you to take accountability and responsibility that it is your career, and that's how you are going to actually you will be held responsible at the end of the day. If you don't get a job, it's your problem, it's not college's problem. Please understand that. Okay. And the more you realize that someone else will help me, then it will take longer for you to stabilize. And I sometimes wish that I was a student in this time where everything is available at the click of the button. And we used to struggle literally to get a lot of help. We had to literally read through a lot of books, and to get a book, we had to travel to find a book. We couldn't even find anyone. Today, you have a lot of websites like Stack Overflow. There are so many fora or maybe some forums which are probably relevant for you. Go to them, try to understand. The more you write the code, the more you run the code, you will understand where the problems are. Don't expect spoon feeding from your professors or lecturers. It's your life at the end of the day. You have to take ownership and you have to deliver. Okay. All right. I think I have covered what was needed. Let me know if any other aspect needs to be covered. I would probably chip in a couple of more hints here. Or if there are any Q&A, I could take that as well.
Students have any kind of queries with respect to maybe software jobs? Just one or two at most. We'll be taking them.
Any queries?
Kavita, may I ask one? I'm Srikala. Hello?
Yes, Srikala, go ahead.
Yeah. Sir, thank you very much for an excellent and technical presentation. Sir, I would like to know the full stack training. Can we do that in the college during our program when the students are doing BSc program? Full stack training for the IT.
So are you talking about an in-person training, or there are a lot of online courses already?
Full stack.
But then, yeah. So basically, full stack, if I have to make it, put it in a layman term, it is end to end, right? From your front end development to the middle tier to your back end, right?
Yes.
So there are people who want to specialize in the back end, like write core Java components, which are highly available, highly configurable, working with the Spring Boot and CI/CD microservices. So there are some people who have the liking towards writing very hardcore core components, right? Could be drivers as well. And there are some people who prefer to work towards the middle tier. But for full stack, someone needs to have the liking to learn the front end, which is typically Angular, React, and HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, so on and so forth. Middle tier, they should know how a front end works with the middle tier in terms of your JSONs, the post and get methods, and work with the middle tier components. And again, the middle tier is basically your core Java, which is your backend tiers. Again, in Docker, Kubernetes, and microservices. And then it has to talk to the frameworks like Spring Boot, and then to the backend. So it is probably the most complicated if you have to. So there are 3 components involved, but there are enough online courses for someone. But someone should know all these 3 to become a full stack. So full stack is typically, if you have experience on both, at least the front and back end, then middle tier is basically more of a back end.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Because few people are approaching us if they, I mean, through them, if we can offer this full stack training to our students. So I would like to know the possibility of it. Otherwise, we'll be fooled because for their commercial and business this thing intentions. So just for that reason.
Full stack. So when you do a full stack, you should also probably plan for the CI/CD. Okay, let me share my screen again. So. So if you look at, are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So the full stack is basically a combination of UI UX and the business process management, customer relations management, enterprise resource planning. Typically, this is SAP, this is Salesforce, this is Pega, or other BPM products. So this typically forms your middle tier legacy systems. Then your continuous integration, deployment, DevOps. So when I look at it, full stack basically means all of this. Okay, it's a multi-skill.
Okay.
So
thank you so much.
So it's probably it's next level, but if you have people that want to work on the front end and the back end, then probably it is the next level of maturity to go for full stack. The full stack is going to be little tough to handle because across, if you're trying to deliver a solution, if there is a breakage or some component fails, it's very difficult to figure out where it is, right? And then one has to do a lot of debugging to figure it out.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation despite your busy schedule. I think you'll be always busy with your job responsibilities. And actually, I have noted a few points to tell my daughter, as she is in 3rd year engineering and she is from IT department. So programming skills, interview skills, how to develop and all. So definitely it will be very useful, not only our students, including my daughter, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And the pleasure is mine to be here. I appreciate
Sir.
you giving some time for me to share thoughts with your college.
Yeah. Kavita ma'am, please, I would like to ask some questions. Sir, please excuse me. I'm Rajesh from Computer Science Department, sir. I have 2 questions. One question from the audience. Already they posted in the chat box from Ms. Rupa, I guess. To learn DevOps, is there any knowledge about request? Any pre-request is required, sir, to learn the DevOps?
So DevOps is, it's more, I would say, an automation. Okay. It is, the word DevOps itself is developers plus ops team. Ops team are typically from the IT department who have been creating VMwares, could be virtual machines, could be servers. So basically the infrastructure team. So those two used to work in silos. Developers used to work, then they used to push on the server and someone used to then deploy it. So sometimes it could take a weeks or months as well, because then you have to go from a development environment to QA to production. With the CI/CD, everything happens in seconds. With companies like, of course, you need to have the right kind of orchestration, the tools, the maturity, the capabilities, the competency in your organization to move into that kind of highly fluid or large-scale deployments. Many organizations typically have a couple of weeks or 2 week sprint cycle, and then they deploy. Now, for DevOps, coming back to Rupa's question, there are very fundamental courses you could find in YouTube. Best thing for a DevOps thing is a lot of organizations are moving towards AWS, GCP, or Azure. So you could go, AWS is probably the largest implementation so far, but Azure and GCP are also catching up. Since AWS has been there, it's much easier to understand those tools. There are a lot of beginner courses on DevOps. So if I have to put it in a very simple way, there is no prerequisite required for DevOps. But then one has to understand the release cycle, how a software is deployed and how it is released into a production environment. So, I mean, there is no harm in going through 5 or 6 videos. And even if you don't make sense, you can look for another video available. And it's not that, I don't think it's a rocket science for DevOps. I would suggest read some white papers to understand the process. It's very simple. It's basically, it's like if you are trying to cook something, you need to get your ingredients. You have to make sure your pan is ready. You don't put your pan on flame while you are cutting things, right? So you have to make sure that everything's ready. Then you move into a production environment, and then after that you deploy and then you take it out. So you have to understand what are the prerequisites in terms of working with DevOps platforms. Basically, understand what is the topology for DevOps. How are the VMwares? On top of that, what AWS typically has? They have an RDS. They have you can get into a lot of complicated, like how the security is held, how validation is done, what is authentication. So that you need to understand. Then you also need to understand how we are going to deploy microservices, either to Docker or Kubernetes, and then how are you going to orchestrate that, and how we are going to then make it talk to the backend. So you need to understand how databases, what is the backend frameworks. So go through. I think if a person who has the intent, they go through 10 to 15 videos of DevOps, even half an hour each session, I think you'll be in good shape to start playing around. Do 2 or 3 videos on DevOps on AWS, which are free videos, and then probably take a free account of AWS and try to implement that. Today, DevOps is more of a click a button, and most of it is taken care. 5 years back, DevOps was a lot more manual intervention. But today, if you go and look at the latest videos, it says, okay, set up a VM, click a button, a VM is already set up. And you would say, I need this kind of CPU, this kind of core CPUs, and then I need this kind of memory or heap memory. All you have to just configure, click a button, it creates it for you. You don't do anything. But then the bigger problem is when your Docker images are elsewhere in your organization, and then you have to push it. So there are certain things that you'll have to learn on the job. But to understand DevOps, there are plenty of videos. I would suggest, please utilize whatever facilities are available on the net. As I said, again, I keep thinking if I probably for a developer, I'd be enjoying more development today rather than 15, 20 years back.
Thank you, sir. Sir, and one more last question. Actually, the data science student, they are starting learning from the, from Python and like advanced level of Python, machine learning, like that they are started learning, sir. Is it necessary that the student having still some kind of doubts that this is necessary that having knowledge is Python and machine learning, it's enough, or else the basic subject like C, Java, it's required to learn to survive in the IT society?
Okay. So I will give my opinion, okay?
Okay.
Today, C is not that relevant, okay? Because those are all modular programs,
yes,
not object-oriented. So it doesn't help anyone. It's good to learn, but it doesn't help. So better to learn language like Python or Java, because those are more ubiquitous and used across companies and across geographies. It's always good to learn something like a Oracle and Python or Java, and then start playing around. I mean, there are, see, one other good aspect here is today you don't have to really write a lot of code. There are IDEs like Eclipse and others where you don't have to remember the syntax. When I was developing, I had to remember the syntax. And today you just do a dot and then shows the methods and the properties. You don't have to even remember the syntaxes. So life has become much easier for developers now. But still some developers are not putting effort to learn. So easier thing is it all depends on what stream you're doing. Are you going to go into data science? Then there is a certain set of technologies you need. Are you going to go into large scale deployment, working on enterprise solutions? Then that's a different ballgame altogether. Are you in the healthcare or life sciences or banks? Then you need highly available 99.9% uptime, which means that the concurrency, latency, I mean, you can get into a lot more. Then that's a different skill to be developed. If it's a data science program, then a Python and a GCP or a AWS account, the first thing, fundamental thing is use Jupyter notebooks, because I sometimes keep coding if I have to understand certain parts of the algorithms. So it is important to start playing. I mean, you learn this concept, apply it. If you don't apply, it will evaporate. It is easy to just go to classes, listen and think that everything is hunky-dory. But when you start writing code, that's when you know nothing is present in the mind. It all gone, evaporated. So it is important to learn. I know it is sometimes looks like general GAN, but at the end of the day, students, it is your responsibility. It's make or mar. If you don't want to succeed, it's your problem. If you want to succeed, you have to put. I mean, there is no substitute for hard work, and then learn something, try to implement and apply it. If you don't apply, go back to your lecturers or professors and ask questions. Don't just keep it to yourself. But there are plenty of avenues to get your questions clarified. There are 4 hours where you can just put a question, you get answers. There are code snippets available, just cut and paste and see how it runs. So it all depends. A person who doesn't want to study, no one can help them, right? So there is a saying, right? You can take a horse to the river, but if the horse doesn't want to drink water, then you just have to wait.
Exactly, sir. Thank you so much for passionate enough to, answering our queries. Thanks a lot, sir. Yeah, ma'am. Kavita, you can go ahead.
Once again, thank you, sir, for clarifying all our doubts with a lot of patience. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, always it's a pleasure interacting with the students, and always better to give our perspective so that sometimes they might not realize that what is expected given the dynamics of the industry. But once again, thanks a lot, and appreciate the time here. It was very exciting to interact all of you. Thank you.
Can we continue paper presentations? Nandini ma'am?
Yeah. Anyone left? How many are there?
Else anybody wants to present?
Anyone is left? Otherwise, we can
Today,
go ahead with the
paper
feedback.
presenters are available.